To Kill a Talking Bird is one of the most memorable episodes of Frasier. I've seen the show before, and when I'm rewatching it, there are some episodes that I remember really well, thanks to my poor memory. There are some that I just don't have a strong recollection of. But To Kill a Talking Bird is one that I remember really, really well. It is a brilliant episode. This is the 14th episode of the 4th season of Frasier. This is directed by David Lee, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode chronologically and share some thoughts. And it starts off with Daphne pointing out that there's another rip on Martin's chair. Frasier is then getting ready to go on a blind date, and Niles comes over with the four-legged Maris and reveals that he's going to be living in the Montana, which is apparently this really exclusive apartment block, even more fancy than Frasier's. And Niles is trying to convince Martin that the four-legged Maris actually really likes Martin. Apparently you're not allowed cats or dogs at the Montana, so I guess that's the end of that character. And Niles, up until this point, still hadn't realised the resemblance with Maris. And then Frasier puts a dish over the dog's ear to represent a pillbox hat. And Niles sees the resemblance. We're then down at KCL really briefly, and it turns out the blind date that Frasier was set up on by Roz didn't go really well. And Roz kind of points out that Frasier might be getting a little bit too desperate. Women can detect that desperation, and it's a bit of a turn-off. And this becomes a little bit relevant later on in the episode. We then spend the rest of the episode in Niles's new apartment. Really nice space, really lovely set design, and he is not completely alone because he has a bird, and it's a bird called Baby. And there's this really fun moment where Martin is interacting with the bird and he's bobbing his head in rhythm with the bird, and he says it's cute but stupid, and the bird repeats cute but stupid. And I don't like birds, but I did find that to be absolutely adorable. And Niles is concerned that he doesn't have people. Everybody in the building has their own people to deal with things. Niles has to do his own bills, and he's decided to throw a party to, I guess, make a good impression. And this is what the episode is about. There is a knock at the door before this, and Frasier answers the door because Niles is busy in the kitchen, and it's a woman called Stephanie. She's played by Patricia Wettig. She seems like a really nice character, and she was actually coming to give Niles some more of his mail, as she accidentally got some. And because Frasier answers the door and Stephanie is aware of Dr. Frasier Crane, they actually get along really well, and Frasier kind of invites Stephanie to Niles's party, and Niles was not exactly the most enthusiastic about this because he doesn't like a crowded table, but nevertheless she's going to be coming to the party. And then we cut to the day of the party. Niles is frantic, and the bird is frantic as well because it hates the sound of the door buzzer. Every time it goes off, it sticks its claws into Niles or whatever it's holding on to at the time. And then Frasier tries to light a fire, and the fire's a bit temperamental, so the bird gets spooked and it becomes stuck. It has dug its talons into Niles's hair, into his scalp by the sound of it, and Niles spends pretty much the rest of the episode in the kitchen with a bird stuck on his head. And of course, every time the buzzer goes, we hear Niles yelping because the bird is going frantic and digging its claws in deeper. And he does try at one point to put a dish towel on the bird's head, or over the entire bird, to try and convince it that it's nighttime so it will go to sleep, which I thought was rather entertaining. The guests then start to come over, and I think they invited an appropriate amount of guests. It wasn't too busy, but there were enough people there for it to create an atmosphere. Unfortunately, somebody called Elaine is at the party, and Niles realises that it's one of Maris's closest friends. I don't know why he didn't know this beforehand, but this is apparently somebody Maris knows. He's now really worried that they'll find out about the bird, and then that'll get back to Maris, and he'll just look like he can't cope with anything. So he's now panicking about that as well, and it's unclear where things are going to go. And Frasier and Niles have a bit of a conversation, kind of argument in the kitchen about what to do, and eventually, in this glorious moment, Niles walks out with the bird on his head. It's such a fantastic moment. And honestly, I have to really applaud all of the dinner guests there. Granted, they were probably going to be polite anyway because they're guests in Niles's home, but they just reacted in a way where it didn't cause a big scene. And one of them even said that it happened to somebody they knew with a cat, and they kind of just allowed Niles to get on with the dinner party, which I thought was really respectful, and I rather liked that. Unfortunately, it seems like things are going in the right direction, but things take a bad direction pretty quickly, and I love how this played out. Again, I don't like birds, but I did like what Baby brought to this, because the bird starts to repeat things that it heard Frasier and Niles saying about the dinner guests. For example, if one of them mentions a dinner guest by name, the bird will repeat something that Frasier and Niles said about that dinner guest, and they're not very nice things. Now, they could have gotten away with it by saying, oh, the bird used to know somebody by that name, but once the bird was repeating things for the second and third dinner guest, it would be a bit of a coincidence that the bird would have known that many people with those names in its previous home. So I don't think they could have ultimately gotten away with it, but they didn't even try to pretend in the beginning. I think they were maybe just too flustered, and it was quite a funny way to end things. We actually end with Frasier sitting on Niles's sofa with a tea towel on his head, because the bird is clearly clinging to Frasier now. As I said at the beginning, I think this is one of the most memorable episodes of Frasier. I remembered it so well, and I still really thoroughly enjoyed it, even though I could remember it a lot. And I think it's a really great introduction to this new chapter in Niles's life. I found it to be very funny. I don't care about birds, and I found that aspect to be very well done. So no complaints from me at all. Nothing but praise from me for To Kill a Talking Bird. I think this is a pretty fabulous episode of Frasier.